This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. We're continuing in Hilchos Tzitzis, Mishna Berura, Daf Hashavua, Siman Yud Aleph, Seif Yud Beis, 11-12. Here we go. How many strings do you put in the tzitzis? Until now we're talking about the place to put the hole. How far the hole should be. It should be between Kesher Agoida and the Tzipayren and 3 etzvos. However, how many strings should you put in? It says Mechaber Minyan Chutei HaTzitzis. The number of strings of tzitzis, B'chal Kanaf, in every corner, Arba'a Kefulim. 4 strings that are double, Sheim Shmona, that turn into 8. Vim Haisif, if you added 5 strings that turn into 10, Pasul, it is disqualified. Yachtoich Rashi Hachutin Ha'arba V'yizchaveim Ba'kana V'yichbaleim V'azi Yushmaina. Cut the ends of the 4 strings and stick them in the corner and double them over, and then there will be 8. So in other words, let's say you have 4 strings that are like round, you cut them, and now you stick them in, you double them over, and you have 8 strings. Meaning, you should cut them on the before you stick them in. Says the Mishna Berura, Arba Kfulam. The Amrina B'Gemara, the Gemara tells us in Menachos Lamed Tes Amud Beis, Gadil Shnayim. The word Gadil is 2. Gedilim is Arba. Gedilim is 4. Perush. Yihavik Siv Gadil. If the Torah just said Gadil Ta'aselacha, have a mashma Shnayim, that would imply 2. The Ein Gadil B'Pachas Mishnayim. So you would have 2 strings, you'd stick it in and make 4. But Hashadachsav Gedilim Arba Mashma. Uvizman Shahaya Tchelas. Back in the day when they had the Tchelas, Hayu Oisin Shnayim Mitchelas Shnayim Ilaban. 2 of the strings were blue wool, 2 of the strings were white wool. V'Idna have a Lavan b'Makam Tchelas. Nowadays we have white instead of blue. V'Oisin Arba Arukim Mishal Lavan. And we make 4 long out of white. Shehem Shmaina, which are 8. After you stick the 4 strings in the garment and you double it over. So it's actually pretty easy to make tzitzis. I remember when I was in day camp many years ago, I don't know, it must have been 8-9 years old. So they taught us to make tzitzis. Remember, they taught us a song, 7, 8, 11, 13. But you stick in the 4 strings and you stick it through the corner, and then you have 8. Midachsiv Pesil Ke'ein Pesila Shu Kafel. It says Gedilim, but it also says Psil. Psil is like a tassel when it's doubled over. Pasul, if you add strings, it's pasul. Why? Mishum deka'avar b'val toisef. By putting in more than 4 strings, you're over b'val toisef. So it's pasul. And so whose opinion is that if you put in more, it's pasul? It seems like it's the opinion of the Rambam. However, the Mishna Berura quotes the Gra, V'hagra b'be'ura of Hiskim halacha l'shita so itor hamuva b'beis Yosef. The Gra agrees with the shita of the Baal Itor, shesaver de'im b'zeh mishum Baal Tosef, that 5 strings is not Baal Tosef. V'chi paslina b'Gemara b'zeh davka b'shahoisef min acher l'hachutim. When are you over Baal Tosef? If you add a different species, for example, kagan chute canvas. Let's say you add a canvas string, or a wool string, or a cotton string. But if you add an additional string of the same species, machshirinan, afil l'chadchila, we kasher it even l'chadchila, hoisav kama sharoitza, to add as much as you want. Va'ayin ba'artzos achayim, look in the Malbim, shehevi oid kama gedol rishon shesam kain. Many Rishonim agree to the Gra's agreement with the Bala Iter, v'lechein masik. Therefore, he concludes, the Malbim concludes, Zimasam kvar, if you already made your tzitzis with 5 strings, v'yavshar l'saknam, and it's impossible to fix, you live in a place, nobody knows how to fix it, if you unravel it, you'll never be able to tie it again. You're allowed to wear them. But as soon as you're able to fix them, you should fix them. But if you do less than 4, that everyone agrees it's possible. Now, what does the Mechaber mean that to cut the ends of the chutin and stick it in? What are you cutting? Presumably, what this means is you have a string. It's a rounded string. There's nothing to stick it in through. There's no end. So you cut it to have an end. That says Mishra Yachtav you should cut it before you stick it in. Bakanaf says the Magen Avram Uber Agra. V'yesh lechascham b'shinav v'loy b'sakin. One should cut them with your teeth and not with a knife. Now this is an interesting practice. Cut tzitzis with your teeth and not with a knife. Presumably, the knife shortens man's life, and it should not be used on a chefza shel mitzvah, but there is a particular connection between teeth and tzitzis. What is it? Well, we know we have 8 strings on each corner, times 4 is 32. How many teeth does a person have? A person has 32 teeth. So there's a specific connection between teeth. In other words, not just not a knife, but anything else. And let's say a person had sharp fingernails. You could cut. No, it's dafka the teeth. There's a special connection between the teeth and the tzitzis. Sif Yud Gimel. Yizoher lachtech rashi achutim la'asosim shmoina koidem sheichrach. You should be careful to cut the ends of the strings to make them 8 before you stick it through. Because if you stuck it through, let's say you stuck through 4 strings, and you didn't cut them yet to make 8, and you made one winding, even if you did one round of windings, the chulya is the part of the tzitzis between knot and knot. V'kashar afilu kesher echad, and you made even one knot. V'acher kach hatachan pasul misham ta'asa v'loy mina asay. It's possible because you need to make the tzitzis bekashrus from the beginning and not have it be made after the fact. Shari bepisol asam, because in this case you made it bepsul. So you want to make sure that the 4 strings have already been turned into 8 before you stick it through the hole. Says Mishna Berura, Yizahar Sivkatan Samach Beis, Ritzon Elohim, meaning to say she'im avar v'loy chasachan kaidem hatchiva. So the Mishna Berura is explaining, because the last statement of the Mechaber, he already told you should cut it before you stick it in. So what's the Mechaber now adding in Sif Yud Gimel? Yizar lachtech rosh lasan shmana kaidem sheyachroich. He just said that. Yachtech rosh arba v'yichtevei makanaf. The answer is, in Sif Yud Beis, he's telling you the best option. Cut it before you put it in the hole. But if you didn't cut it before in your hole, if you didn't cut it before you put it through the hole, at least cut it before you make windings. That's what we're adding. If you violated what we said in Sif Yud Beis and you didn't cut it before you stuck it in, at the very least, be careful now before you wind it. Va'ayin taz. Chulya echad. Now, we know the chulya, I think what we do is we make 2 knots, that's a kesher elyon. We wind it 7 times, we make 2 knots. We wind it 8 times, we make 2 knots. We wind it 11 times, we make 2 knots. And we wind it 13 times. 7, 8, 11, 13. So, when we say it's going to be pasul, that's even if you wind it 3 times and you make a knot, it will be pasul. Says Mishna Berura, afilu shel shalosh krichos v'kashar v'tzayna loimer asa chulya. If you made a chulya, you made a winding, v'gam kashar achar chulya, and you made a knot after the chulya, afilu rak kesher achar, even 1 knot. Yatsi yidei chavas medaraisa, you're fulfilling your obligation biblically of tzitzis. Afilu lo yasa klala kesher shesamach lakanaf. You hear this? Midaraisa, if you stick the strings in, you wind it 3 times and you make a knot, even though you don't have a knot right after you stuck it in, that is a biblical fulfillment of the mitzvah of tzitzis. V'im kain havatasoi v'lo min asei. In that case, you made the tzitzis. The tzitzis were made after they became, before they became kosher, because you didn't cut it yet. But, says the Mishna Berura, if you didn't make the knot after the winding, even though you made the knot before the winding, you did not yet complete the creation of tzitzis. Because if you don't put a knot after the windings cannot remain. Nothing holds it in place. And therefore you could cut it. So in other words, if you make a knot and you make windings, but you didn't make the knot after the windings, you could cut the strings to make them 8. There are those who are machmir. No, once you have the knot, even before the chulios, you can no longer cut it. You should be concerned for their opinion. Veda, you should know the mashakasav kesher echad. This that we say, even if you made one knot, it doesn't mean a single knot. It means one of the 5 knots. But each one of the 5 knots are doubled. One of the 5 knots that you normally make, you make it knot 7, knot 11, knot 13, knot. But each knot is a double knot. If it's not a double knot, it's not called a knot. It's not a bar knot. It's, in other words, it's not considered a knot unless you knot it twice. Okay, Rabbi Isai, we'll continue tomorrow in Sif Yudalid. Have a wonderful day. Bracha v'hatzlacha. Kol tov. All the best.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.